Within some teens, there is a capability to commit evil so horrific that it goes against all comprehension. For some, this kind of evil may be driven by jealousy, rage, or even betrayal. In the case of the teens in this video, it was a twisted and uncontrolled sexual desire that led them to commit murders so sickening that they'll make your stomach turn. First, we have the case of Jose Amaya-Guardado, a quiet teenager simply trying to build a better future. He was lured into the Florida woods by so-called friends, only to be hacked to death with a machete in a gruesome, premeditated act of pure evil. Then, we have Amber Gibson, who trusted the one person meant to protect her, her own brother, only for him to commit the ultimate betrayal, assaulting and murdering her before abandoning her body in the cold night. Finally, we have Cameron Finnegan, whose life took an unimaginably evil turn when his involvement with an infamous Satanist group nearly led to the death of an innocent young girl. These cases, while all very different, share a very haunting similarity. They all involve innocence destroyed by those who should have never had the power to take it. Let's keep watching to see how they unravel. In 2015, Jose Amaya-Guardado was an ambitious 17-year-old known for his very kind and quiet demeanor. He had moved to Miami, Florida, with his family nearly a decade earlier, escaping the violence of El Salvador in search of a better life. What his family never could have imagined at the time was that they were taking their son directly into a new nightmare far more dangerous than the one he had faced back in his home country. Jose was shy but hardworking, determined to support his family while chasing his dream of becoming a mechanic. His parents, Lucia and Santos, wanted nothing more than to give their son a real shot at success. So when they heard about Job Corps, a federally funded vocational program that promised young adults hands-on training and guaranteed employment, it seemed like the perfect opportunity for him. In reality, it was a corrupt den of predators. Job Corps marketed itself as a sanctuary for young people looking to build a future. In reality, the world would later discover that it had become a breeding ground for violence and corruption. The tax-funded program is now the largest residential program of its kind in the country, but a CBS News investigation raises serious questions over how well some Job Corps centers are doing. Many students who were a part of this Miami-based Job Corps situation had come from extremely desperate situations. It was an open secret that many students were there as an alternative to jail and had been placed in the program by court order. For many, it was this or potentially spending years behind bars. Jose's kind and trusting nature made him a particularly easy target for those involved in this program who were hoping to prey on vulnerable young people. When Jose first arrived at Job Corps in Homestead, Florida, he was assigned a roommate. His name was Cahem Arbello, and he was a 20-year-old with a reputation for being a troublemaker who would sell illegal substances around the campus. Cahem had a circle of friends who also had similar reputations and criminal pasts. They included Cahem's girlfriend, 18-year-old Desiree Strickland, as well as 18-year-old Jonathan Lucas and 19-year-old Christian Colon. They all lived and attended school at Homestead Job Corps. This is the last group of people that any protective parent would ever want their child to be around. But Jose's parents, miles away, could do nothing to protect their son from these monsters. For 2 months straight, this group of thugs absolutely tormented Jose. They considered him to be an outsider and too weak to fight back. What they did to him was much worse than any kind of childish bullying. It was pure evil. But Cahem and his pals weren't satisfied with just tormenting him. They decided to take their fun up a notch and plan his murder. None of them had any real reason for wanting to do this to Jose. He had never done anything to them. These were simply a group of people who enjoyed causing pain to others. The group spent 2 weeks planning the murder and even planted what they would use as the murder weapon, a machete, in a wooded area on the campus. They also dug a hole in the ground that they planned to bury him in. Then, on June 28, 2015, they put their plan into motion. On that particular day, Jose had asked the staff for permission to leave campus to buy snacks, something that the school allowed. He planned to quickly grab something to eat and then come back right away. Unfortunately, his bullies intercepted him. Cahem and the others targeted Jose when he was alone and lured him out into the woods, making him believe they just wanted to hang out. Maybe Jose had hoped that they were finally coming around and wanted to settle their differences. Unfortunately, this couldn't have been further from the truth. Once they were far enough from the campus, the nightmare began. Each member of the group took their turn in what would become a viciously violent and unimaginably cruel attack. Cahem was the first to strike, swinging the machete they had planted in the woods into Jose's head and face. It shattered his bones and left him lying helpless and bleeding on the ground, yet still alive. But they were far from being done. In an act of pure evil, Jose's killers forced him to crawl into the hole they had dug earlier. Then, they started burying him alive. A short time later, Desiree Strickland returned to the group after slipping off into the woods to use the restroom. When she got back, she was absolutely furious to see what was going on, but not for the reason many may think. She was mad because the group had started to carry out the murder without her. She grabbed the machete herself and began taking part in the horrific brutality as Jose gasped for air beneath the dirt. Cahem and Desiree stayed behind, and that's when they did the unthinkable. They had sex right next to the grave as Jose slowly died, their hands still covered with his blood. Back on campus, nobody seemed to be concerned that Jose had never returned. However, when he failed to get in touch with his parents as he usually would, they contacted Job Corps directly. That's when they found out that Jose never returned from his snack run. Immediately, they knew that something was very wrong. But when they called the cops, officers told them they had to wait 72 hours before filing a missing person report. Jose was still only 17 years old at the time, so he was technically a minor. Everyone knows that every second counts when a child is missing, but the system had failed him completely. Yet again, Jose's family decided that they couldn't wait. If the cops wouldn't search for Jose, they would take matters into their own hands. They searched everywhere, desperate to find their son. Days later, Jose's brothers decided to comb through the thick woods surrounding Job Corps. As the sun began to set, they came across a scorched patch of land. Something about it felt off. As they stepped closer, they saw 2 feet sticking out of the ground. Jose's brother recognized his socks immediately. He collapsed, screaming for help as the unimaginable reality crashed down on him. Their little brother was dead. The news shocked the community. Police say the attack happened on Sunday, June 28th. According to the police report, the teen was lured into a wooded area near the school, where the killers had already dug a grave and had a machete waiting. Investigators quickly turned their attention to Cahem and his gang. It didn't take them long to figure out that this group had been relentlessly tormenting Jose. But the actual truth of what they had done was worse than they ever could have imagined. When the group was confronted, the 3 men involved didn't take long to confess. Police say the 3 men confessed, giving graphic details, with Arbello allegedly swinging the machete as the others watched, according to the report, as the victim lay on the ground dying. He was ordered to lay in the grave, the body burned and buried. Then, according to the police report, Arbello and Strickland had missing word/phrase here in the woods before heading back to campus. But Desiree fought back, insisting that she was innocent. "I didn't. All I want to know what you were involved in. I didn't do anything." No, she became erratic and violent and even missing word/phrase here. One of the Miami officers who tried to take her into custody. While facing her charges, she showed no emotion. There's a charge of first-degree murder. 18-year-old Desiree Strickland is the latest arrest. She and 3 others were charged with murder with a deadly weapon. 20-year-old Cahem Arbello, 18-year-old Jonathan Lucas, and 19-year-old Christian Colon, all charged with murder in the death of 17-year-old Jose Gatto. Time and time again, she proved that she wasn't the least bit sorry for what she had done, nor were any of the rest of them. They had left a family completely devastated, and they didn't care. Santos Gatto asked only that the people responsible for taking the life of his son pay for what they've done. But despite the fact that all those responsible for these horrific crimes had been captured and later convicted, the justice they faced was shockingly lenient. Initially, prosecutors sought the death penalty for all 5 suspects. However, in 2017, the charges were reduced. Jonathan Lucas received just 5 years in prison, while Christian Colon is expected to serve only probation. Desiree Strickland's sentence was maybe the one that is most shocking of all. After taking a plea deal, she received just 15 years behind bars. As for Cahem Arbello, the one who seems to be taking the majority of the blame for this horrific crime, he has yet to be sentenced. On a cold November night in 2021, 16-year-old Amber Gibson stepped out of her foster home in Hamilton, Scotland, feeling very excited. She was going to meet up with her older brother, Connor Gibson, someone she hadn't seen in a while. To Amber, this wasn't just a casual reunion. She was hoping it was a chance to rebuild a fractured bond. Even though a difficult childhood had driven them apart, Amber still hoped to form a connection with her older brother. At 9:51 p.m., she sent a Snapchat selfie of herself standing next to Connor. She captioned it, "My big bro." What she didn't know at the time was that this would be the last picture of herself that she would ever take. Both Amber and Connor had difficult upbringings. Their biological parents had been violent and neglectful, and they had been brought into the foster care system at a young age. In 2010, they were adopted by a seemingly loving couple that wanted to give them a second chance at a family. Both Amber and Connor had trouble adjusting to their new adoptive family, likely because of their traumatic past. Amber struggled with emotional problems. Meanwhile, Connor was often withdrawn and had disturbing behavior from an early age, including morbid drawings, violent thoughts, and an unsettling lack of emotion. Surprisingly, though, it was Amber who decided to go back to the foster care system, while Connor stayed with his adoptive family until he turned 18 years old. Despite their separation, the siblings occasionally stayed in touch, but their relationship was anything but normal. On November 26, 2021, Connor contacted the foster home where Amber had been staying to ask to see her. The staff strongly advised her not to go, warning that it was late, cold, and possibly unsafe. But Amber, always believing in the best in people, especially her brother, just brushed off their worries. At 9:15 p.m., she signed out of the facility and walked off into the night. Surveillance cameras captured the last known moments of Amber's life. At 9:57 p.m., she and Connor were seen walking down the street, heading toward a local park, a secluded area surrounded by trees and darkness. About an hour and a half later, Connor was seen again, but this time he was alone. He seemed breathless, and his clothes were disheveled. He returned to his own homeless hostel and was later caught on security cameras dumping a plastic bag of clothing into a trash bin. Here is the haunting footage of him getting rid of the items. By the next morning, Amber had never come home and was officially declared missing. For 2 days, search teams combed the area, hoping that maybe Amber had just run away or gotten lost. But by the third day, any hopes they had left were shattered. The cops discovered Amber's body hidden in the woods of Cadzo Glen Park. She had been brutally beaten, sexually assaulted, and strangled to death. Investigators didn't have to look far for a suspect. The evidence pointed in just one direction, right to Connor Gibson. From the very beginning, the cops confidently believed that Connor had brutally assaulted and killed his own little sister, someone who had trusted him completely. But it would be forensic evidence that would seal his fate. This included his DNA found on Amber's torn clothes, her DNA found on his jacket that he had thrown out, and his bodily fluids found on her body. It was a disgustingly horrific outcome, but somehow it gets even worse. Just hours after Connor killed Amber, a 45-year-old man named Stephen Corgan stumbled upon her body. Instead of calling the cops, he did something even more depraved. He violated her corpse and then dragged it further into the bushes in an attempt to conceal it. That's right, there's not just one monster in this story, but two. Connor, who would never show an ounce of remorse for his actions, would eventually be convicted of Amber's murder and sentenced to life in prison with no possibility of parole. Stephen Corgan would also be convicted for his own sick crimes and sentenced to 9 years behind bars. Amber's crime is particularly hard to stomach, but it was probably the only person she had ever trusted who ultimately betrayed her in the worst way possible. In the quiet town of Ham, West Sussex, a disturbing case would prove just how dark the world of online extremism can truly be. This is the case of 19-year-old Cameron Finnegan, a once normal teenager whose descent into a Satanist cult resulted in him becoming the victim of a series of heinous crimes. Cameron became very involved with 764, an extremist group that is known for its violent and abusive beliefs. This network, which stretches internationally, encourages members to commit and share acts of extreme violence. It especially targets young and vulnerable people online. Operating under the alias Acid on platforms like Telegram and Discord, Cameron began having explicit conversations with a young girl. While Sussex law enforcement has never identified this girl or revealed what happened to her, they say that they have proof that he asked for her explicit images. But the nightmare doesn't end there. Cameron also encouraged this girl to end her life while live streaming it all for his own sick gratification. He also plotted the murder of a homeless individual, explaining his plans in group chats. Luckily, he never had the chance to follow through with this before the cops arrested him. Authorities arrested Cameron in March 2024. Listen to his shockingly cold-hearted words to the cops. What I was concerned about is if she went through with it and I got caught. So concerned about the only thing you're concerned about is if she went through with it and you got caught? A search of his residence revealed a tapestry depicting a satanic beast, a defaced Bible, and writings filled with violent symbols. Most terrifying of all was an 11-page document outlining methods for mass casualty attacks. He would later plead guilty to multiple charges, including encouraging self-harm and criminal damage. He was sentenced to just 6 years behind bars but will be supervised when he is eventually released. Clearly, these cases prove that the worst kinds of evil can exist in everyone, even teenagers. And if it is not stopped, it can lead to unthinkable tragedy. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and leave a comment down below. Until next time, sleep tight.